is time for another Playful Humans podcast. We're talking about Top Gun Love with a former fighter pilot and now sex and relationship expert, Frank Wiegers. You can find him at topgunlove.com. We're going to explore all kinds of things: flying planes, writing saucy romance novels, and sex and relationship advice. So exciting things. I'm excited to get started with you, Frank. We like to start with the joke of the week. The joke of the week this week is brought to you by a new cryptocurrency called Decibel. It's a sound investment. Okay, the official joke of the week is, what do you call a sweaty flying monkey? A hot air baboon.
Oh, no.
Those are pretty bad. Can you beat them?
Yeah. Yeah, you want a joke?
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Top Gun Love, so people probably know that I was a fighter pilot. So you know how a woman can tell when her date with a fighter pilot is half over. It's when he says, well, that's enough about me. Let me tell you about my airplane. And then there's the other part of, do you want to be a fighter pilot or do you want to grow up?
A lot of musicians give me
that's kind of the same deal,
but that's what we talk about on the show. I love it because I love people that follow their passions and the dreams. So let's start with the fighter pilot part, and then we'll get to the sex stuff, because I'm excited to talk about The Magical Sex Book. This is a book that you wrote. It's a bestseller, a guide to understanding amazing sex within the context of loving emotional relationships. That sounds awesome. And you also have the Men and Women in Their Hormones book titled So That's Why They Do That. So those are the previews. We're going to dive deep into some other topics. But first, tell me about following your passion and flying airplanes.
I think my desire to fly fighters happened in World War II. And I read all the stories about the Flying Tigers and those heroes that fought in the Battle of Britain flying the Spitfires. And I said, man, that's like being a knight in the old days, So I really wanted to do that. And so I would, if you looked in my room, like now you can see behind me, there's a couple models on the wall. My whole room was filled with model airplanes. And, it was just something I wanted to do. So I went to college, and fortunately, the college I went to had mandatory Air Force ROTC. So I did that, and then I wound up in that. I got my commission after I graduated and went right from college into the Air Force and then right into pilot training. Loved it. I love flying. I was a distinguished graduate, and I said, I want to be a fighter pilot. And they said, sorry, this is the Cold War. We need all the good pilots flying bombers. Oh, man. So I wound up in bombers, and then they said, well, we'll let you go get another degree if you want. So I said, I'll take that. Anything to do to get out of flying bombers, which is the most boring job in the world. So I went to college, got an aeronautical engineering degree, and halfway through that, I called up and said, I'll volunteer and fly fighters in Vietnam. They said, okay, here's your orders. And so I got my engineering degree, went to Vietnam, trained as a fighter pilot. And it took me about, I'm a slow learner. So it took me about 3 weeks to figure out what we were doing over there was really stupid. And it was a big mistake. And I lost 20% of my squadron. One of them was my roommate and my wingman. And I came back, and then they made me an instructor pilot to teach new pilots, just got their wings, how to be fighter pilots. I got to say, it was the best job I ever had, because all we did was go up and play with those airplanes, and nobody was shooting at us. So, it was all training. Yeah. And so we practiced dogfighting, we practiced all that stuff. And it was, you talk about playing, man, that was playing at a really high level, because those airplanes would do amazing things. So
man, that's so cool. I actually have a friend that did that as an instructor too. I can't imagine. And it was always his dream from the time he was a kid too. And I think it's so cool when people get to live it. So my best or favorite question for somebody in that situation is, I found that sometimes your dream as a kid is different than what the job is as an adult. So I kind of screwed it up. I wanted to be on the radio. I thought it'd be cool to, be on the radio, be a famous DJ and stuff. Turns out you're just sitting in a room by yourself all day telling jokes that nobody listens to because they're not, or nobody laughs at because nobody's in the room. And it wasn't quite the job I had expected. What's something about being a fighter pilot or a pilot in the military that you think maybe people don't know until you get there?
Well, it's a lot of work. It's not, I mean, flying those airplanes is not only difficult, it's dangerous. And during that phase, like I said, we lost 20% of my squadron in the 1 year I was in Vietnam. When I came back, we used to crash one a month in the training program. Wow. I mean, that F-100, which is the model that's on the wall behind me there, that F-100 was a really tricky airplane to fly. And I got bit in the butt more than once, but fortunately, I was able to recover and I didn't die. But there were a couple of times when I thought, sure, I was a goner. And wow. So that's the bad news about flying fighters, which is a lot of fun. On the other hand, going up and playing in the clouds and chasing your buddy and practice dogfighting and all that, I mean, unless you've done it, you don't know, it's really amazing.
Amazing. Now we have so much to talk about with you. How do you go from being a Top Gun fighter pilot to a sex and relationship expert?
Well, it's really interesting. When I got out of the Air Force, I got divorced from my first wife. And I said, I really don't know much about love, sex, and relationship. And so when I got out of the Air Force, I also had a good friend of mine. I was teaching stunt flying. And this young lawyer wanted to learn all those stunt flying tricks. So I taught him. He said, man, with your engineering degree, he said, you ought to go to law school and be an aviation accident lawyer. I said, I could do that. Wow. So I went to law school, got a law degree, and I worked in a law office, and I went, ooh, I don't think I want to do this. It was not fun. And so I got out of that, and I frogged around, did a lot of stuff, worked in aerospace. But basically, I wanted to have a relationship that really worked and really supported me, and I could support her. And it was more than just a couple of weeks. I used to have those 90-day wonder relationships. You were in them for 90 days, and then you wondered why you stuck around for even 90 days. So it was that was the thing that led me to do it. And I said, okay, I know how to study. So I found teachers from all over the world, a Native American shaman that I worked with for over 15 years. And they all taught me really amazing things about love, sex, and relationship. And I said, I'm up to the point now where I can have really good sex, but I still don't have the relationship thing figured out. And in my studies about sex, I found that there was a thing called sex magic, and you could use the sexual energy. Well, most people know about the law of attraction, right? What you think about is what you attract. Yeah. Well, so your thoughts have energy. Well, we know that sex has energy. So if you combine the energy of your thoughts with the energy of sex, that's like putting rockets on your thoughts, really empowers them. So there's a whole technology about magical sex. And we talk about that in our book, The Magical Sex Book. But that's not the real key. The real key is the connection that you have with your partner. So if you want to have magical sex, you really have to have a magical relationship. And most guys like me just don't know about relationships. It comes pretty natural to women. But for guys, we're going to see, well, how can I beat this guy at that? How can I win this? How can I do? Because we're all about competition. Well, sex is not a competition. It's I don't know. It's just a thing of joy and pleasure, and I think of it as play.
Yeah, and in the play research that I've done, and I've read, I don't know, dozens of books, somewhere between 30 and 50 books. Occasionally somebody will mention sex, and it's sort of that, oh, by the way thing. So I love that you're bringing it to the forefront for everybody, because they'll say things like, oh, by the way, sex is great for your emotional health, your mental health, your physical health. And there's all kinds of great benefits like pain killing and better sleep and It's fun. It's, it's a cheat code for life. You can have free fun without the, hangover and other things, as long as you're safe and in a relationship and stuff that you mentioned. Not a whole lot of negative side effects there. So I think maybe my question to you here is, what are some of the benefits maybe people don't think of, or maybe why they don't try to figure this out or include this as part of like their happy adulthood life?
Well, that's true. I had a teacher I studied with, and she was really a great teacher. And she said, the deepest wounds in our culture are sex and money. And she would always talk about prosperity consciousness and how to get more money. And I said, well, who's talking about sex? And she said, well, not me. I said, I'll take that one. I'll talk about it. So I dove into it and studied like you. I read, you look at that wall of books behind me, and they're all about love, sex, and relationship. And so I found that the thing, it's so difficult for men and women to talk to each other about sex. And 85% of the women, it was a survey that the men, 85% of the men thought they were good to great lovers.
Yeah.
15% of the women agreed with them. Well, that tells us two things. One, the women aren't telling the guys the truth. And two, the guys don't know what they don't know. And they're not willing to find out about it. They're willing to find out about how to play a better game of golf, or how to play better tennis, or how to do whatever else they're.
If you're going to improve your stroke, you might want to choose the right one. So I guess that leads us to the next question, because I think you're dead on there, which is, what do you think the biggest thing is, or maybe two or three things that people don't know about sex that you wish everybody did?
Well, first of all, you mentioned the things that one, eros, sexual energy, is the life force energy. And the higher your life force energy is, like you talk about, I love what you say, the more you play, the more energy you have. Well, I think sex can be a form of play. And the more eros energy you have, the more creativity you have, the more available you are to everybody else, not just your partner, but to those people in life. Because I'm 88 years old, and I still have women coming up to me and talking to me. I have guys, that talk, and then they find out that I know about love, and they ask questions, and I love talking about it. So it's knowing that you have that sexual energy. I think that's really key, and then being willing to talk about it with your partner deepens the level of intimacy in the partnership. And that really expands both of you and helps you to heal all those wounds you got from mom and dad when you were growing up, So,
well, I love that, because of the parallels here again with the play research is there's a lot of different types of play. There's board games, or you can play a sport, or you can be creative and artistic, or you can solve a puzzle. And there's a lot of different ways to play. And I feel like the same thing is true when it comes to sex. There's a lot of ways to do it. There's a lot of preferences. And unless you really kind of figure it out for yourself and then talk about it with your partner, it's a really hard guessing game, right?
That's right. And, it's interesting because in the Magical Sex book, we talk about 4 areas of play. There's pre-play, there's foreplay. Everybody knows what that is. Well, at least they should, whether they do it or not. Then there's e-play, which is the sexual.
It's the best 15 seconds of the whole experience, right?
Yeah, right. And then there's afterplay, which most people don't know about either. Women do, but men don't. So back to pre-play is what you do before foreplay. And so it's all play, and really the idea of pre-play is to establish the connection with your partner, because this is where the magic happens. It's not about how the technique that to go thrust this way or position that way or do this. No, it's about the connection that you have with your partner. And that goes eyeball to eyeball, heart to heart, breath to breath, those kind of things. And we talk about how you can do that in pre-play. And that sets the stage for foreplay and begins to open her up, because her mind never stops. It just goes and goes and goes. So you've got to do something to get her present in her body. And that's what pre-play is about. And then you can go do foreplay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah. I would love to hear more about your thoughts of the differences between men and women, because I know my own experience, but I don't know theirs. I kind of get the feeling that for men, we get laser focused and we're in mentally, and then our brain shuts off as soon as the foreplay starts. But I feel like it doesn't for women. That the story they're telling themselves about the experience is just as important as the physical part of it. Would you agree?
Absolutely. There's a wonderful book called Come As You Are, and written by a wonderful woman. Her name escapes me right now. Um, but, but she talks about the context. And that's what pre-play is about. It's about setting the context of the lovemaking that you're going to do. So that's really what it's, I mean, it's all about that. And then you can get into foreplay, and there's lots of stuff you need to do, and you need to spend at least 15 to 20 minutes doing foreplay before you get into the play. And I want to just quickly touch on afterplay because you've just created an enormous amount of sexual energy for both of you. And you can use that energy, to deepen the bond between the two of you, which is really important. But also you can do what I mentioned earlier, the sex magic, just by thinking of the things that you want to manifest. Maybe it's a deeper relationship. Maybe you want more money, a new car, a better house, whatever it is. But if both of you are thinking about those things at the same time with all that sexual energy, that's very powerful. And that can really attract things. I know because I've used that and it works. So you can make the game of playing sex into something that's really wonderful and really takes both of you to a higher level in everything that you do.
Well, I appreciate you sharing. I feel like that's a happy, healthy message for everybody. And if you want to learn more about it, go to topgunlove.com and check out the book, The Magical Sex Book, or So That's Why They Do That, Men, Women, and Their Hormones. Two great books there for you. So I want to ask you now about the writing. So I think you wrote those with your partner, but you also write erotica now for fun, and you enjoy just the creative writing side of it, which I think is completely different. So have you always enjoyed writing since you were a kid, or is this something you found later?
Well, when I was in Air Force ROTC as a college boy, I wrote a 300-page manual on how to be the wing commander of a cadet wing. And so I've been writing technically since then, but creative writing is a whole different animal. And so I'm really learning, because I always wind up, I give my pages to my wife to read, and she said, "You're preaching." Once again, you're trying to teach your principles in fiction, and it totally stops the story and it turns people off, and then they close the book and they go away. So I'm learning how to deliver my message, so to speak, in a story, in erotica, that will teach people. And I'm not good at it yet. I'm learning though, but
I love that.
But I'm
Me
practicing.
either. I don't want to cut you off, but I relate to it so much because I'm trying to write a book for playful humans. And I found that I do the same thing. I get really serious about these things, that if you're not playing, you're damaging your health, or these are such great benefits. And I get all preachy, and it's not very fun. It's about playful humans. It should be fun. And like you said, your books are about sex. They should be interesting, right? They shouldn't be technical manuals. And it's a tough task sometimes.
Yeah, the magical sex book is in a conversational. So it's a short book, and it's a really easy read. And just one plug, the best way to deepen your relationship is to buy the paperback copy of that book and sit down with your partner and read it like one chapter a week or something like that. And you'll be amazed at the conversations that you can have with your partner and talk about stuff, because women don't talk about it. They don't tell their man that he's not doing it right, because he doesn't want to hear that. And it turns him off. But guys can learn to be more receptive and do the things, because it doesn't make any sense if you get yours and she doesn't get hers. Not fair. So anyhow.
I think it's great. So tell me about the writing process. And it sounds like you enjoy it, but it's also a challenge for you.
Oh yeah.
So what's trying to write this erotica like?
I had about 200 pages into a novel, and I gave it to people, and I got really mixed results. And so I said, well, some people like the stories, but then they thought, well, this is boring and that's boring. So I said, okay, I subscribed to Writer's Digest magazine. And then they're having their annual novel writing conference in Pasadena, which is just up the street from, well, it's an hour drive from Santa Monica where I live. But anyhow, I went to that conference and I went, oh man, there's a whole technology to writing novels. And so I said, okay, I learned all this. So then I said, using my engineering and organizational skills, I built a spreadsheet with all the chapters and all the key points and all the everything. I mean, it was like 3 feet wide and 2 feet deep, and I got it pasted up on the back of my door in my office here. And I looked at that and I went, oh, geez, that's too much. I don't want to work that hard. I'm old. I don't need to do that. So I put the novel aside and I started writing short stories, which you don't have to have all that stuff in a short story. Well, I ran into the same dang problems. I'm preaching in the short stories. And my wife told me, and I got a beta reader and they told me. I got another beta reader and they told me. I went, yikes, I got to get this figured out. So I'm still struggling around, and I get one beta reader who's a really another writer of erotic, and he said, you need to take a course in creative writing. And my wife said, no, you don't. You're a good writer. You can do that. So I don't know. I'm still.
I love that you're still playing with it. And I think it's probably connecting with the creative juices and the heart and the story, which I think is interesting because in the last 6 months, ChatGPT has come out too. And I found that it can't do humor like I want to do in my book. And it probably can't do erotica as well either. That there are still writing that we need humans to do. But have you tried having a robot write anything or give you a start?
No, I'm not. I want it to be my story, not a robot story. And
I love it. That's the one thing that AI can't do is tell your story. They can tell a story, but they can't tell yours. So I love that. Okay, last question for you here is just about the societal norms. I found that play has some weird things that, we think it's for kids sometimes, or we feel like it's not work. And if you're playing, you're not, learning or growing or succeeding, or you're not grinding and hustling, or hustle culture is really bad here. And I feel like there's a whole can of worms around sex too, that if people could talk about it, if they felt comfortable, if they weren't ashamed, and other stereotypes and cultural issues. Is there anything that you think, I'll give you the chance to preach here since you just mentioned it so many times, anything that you wish to preach or that you think we would all be healthier if we changed in our society?
Well, it's really interesting about guys. They'll spend countless dollars. I mean, thousands, even tens of thousands. I know because I had race cars and I had sailboats. And I mean, you talk about suck up money. Oh boy, and time. So guys will spend all this time and money on their hobbies and no time or money on their relationship or their love life. So guys, you gotta turn around there, and the payoff is the relationship doesn't cost anymore. And the payoff from the relationship is enormous. I mean, the sexual satisfaction when you're both working on it together. I mean, I'm 88, my wife is 79, and we still have that celebration. We make Sunday is our day of worship. We worship each other. And the connection is so empowering. I cannot say how deeply that affects me, and it keeps me hooked into the relationship. And then I can put up with her foibles more than she can put up with my foibles. And it's just do it, give love and sex a chance.
I think that's awesome. That's a great place to end on. Now, are you ready to play a game?
Sure.
Here we go. We're going to play Survey Says. Survey Says is just like that Friendly Feud you might see on TV. We 100 people. The top answers are on the card. You get 1 or you get 2 out of 3 right. and we will call you the winner, Frank. Name a part of the body where men start to grow hair about the same time they're losing it on their heads.
Ears and nose.
Ears is the number one answer for sure. 43 points there. Nose is 11 at number 4. Back and chest coming in at 2 and 3. Okay. This is one just specifically for you. Give me a sexy movie that would be awkward to watch with your in-laws.
Oh, how about The Secretary?
Oh, it's not on here, but good answer. 50 Shades of Grey, Magic Mike, American Beauty, and American Pie. Those are kind of older there. Last one. We need this one now. During a power failure, what's something you can still turn on?
Your body.
There you go. Your spouse, your body coming in with 11 points there on our list. Flashlight, radio, water, and stove also on the list. You did it. You win. So congratulations. We give you a chance to have a free 30-second commercial here. Anything that we can do to help you or anything that you can do to help us?
You know, I just love talking about love, sex, and relationship, and being here with you for the last time that we had together. It's really been fun, and it is play. And I want to thank you very much for what you're doing, Mike. It's really great. And I would say, you know, folks, give sex a chance. It's really worthwhile. I'm reading about how youngsters today are just not interested in sex. They don't know what they're missing because they haven't had a chance to do it right. You get too caught up with porn, and that's not, I mean, that's sex, but it's not love, and it's not empowering at all. In fact, sometimes it can be very disempowering. So that's basically it. So check me out on topgunlove.com. And if you want to give me a call, I'd be happy to talk to you. And buy my book. It'll help you.
Yeah, you bet. The book, The Magical Sex Book, is a bestseller. Go find that at topgunlove.com, as mentioned, and reach out to Frank Wiegers if he can help you. That would be great. Now, if you are looking to become a little bit more playful outside of the bedroom, that's where we come in at Playful Humans. Go to playfulhumans.com. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening or watching it right now. Share it with somebody that you think needs to hear it, maybe your spouse or something. Start a conversation. And send me suggestions for future guests or anything. Mike Montague on all the social media channels. And until next time, if you can't be good at it. That's what I always say. We'll see you next week.
Amen.
Don't wait for tomorrow. Live for today. Keep on chasing the sunshine.